Our fourth speaker is William Fulton, who's a Christchurch-based architect in practice with Stuart Ross, Fulton Ross Team Architects. He has a special interest in heritage buildings and has worked on many of Christchurch's significant heritage structures. Sadly, many of these have been seriously damaged by or destroyed by the recent earthquakes, and yes, I spotted a couple of those myself yesterday. So welcome to William.
Thank you, Priscilla. Well, here in fact is the view looking down High Street. And we're living in a state of suspended time. The central city exists only in our memory. And having lived without it for 6 months, it begs the question, why do we have a city at all? Well, humans began settling permanently, as Jonathan said, about 9,000 years ago, and there are many theories why, from the development of agriculture to the proximity of natural resources, as in here at Byblos, or modern Jubal in the Lebanon, another of the oldest continuously inhabited places in the world. It originally existed as the centre for paper production. Another theory, the one that I quite like, is that human groups wanted to remain close to and remember their dead. These maps of the development of Beijing illustrate how successive generations leave behind reminders of their time. You can see how the city expanded, receded, shifted position over its 4,000-year existence. And the plan of Beijing in 1400, I discovered, bears remarkable resemblance to the Christchurch we know between the four avenues, or we knew. My hope is that the massive sprawl of modern Beijing is not an image of our future. In a physical sense, cities, and here's Rome, represent layers of experience and are depositories of cultural memory. Our city was rocked off its foundations in February, leaving us all in a state of shock and suffering from amnesia. However, as we regain our memories, we'll recall that people have lived here for centuries and that it was indeed, as Di has pointed out, once a wetland. And much of our physical inheritance was brought as cultural baggage in the cabins of a handful of ships. But unlike most 19th century settlements, these early settlers didn't stop at the port. They headed over the hill to an open plain where a river cut a distinctive path, and they laid down a classical grid. The early city, or early town, had humble beginnings, and even up until the 1880s, sorry this is a wee bit blurry, but you can see that there's more empty space than built form. But by the early 20th century, much of the central city was developed, still with a town belt, you can see within the four avenues, but with suburban settlement jumping the four avenues and heading beyond. This aerial and plan from the 1940s shows that the city was beginning to consume its productive setting. And by the end of the 20th century, Christchurch was very much the modern city, spread from the Port Hills to the sea and marching out towards the Waimakariri. Now, the main road in from Ferrymead, or High Street, typified the growth of the city over time. So initially it was a scattering of huts, which soon became a two-storey streetscape that slowly grew in scale as horses, trams, bikes and cars passed in the streets below. Parts of High Street became neglected, trapped possibly by the one-way street system. But a recent renaissance saw a new respect for the old buildings, only to be destroyed in an awful instant. We fondly remember the Art Centre and its Gothic revival contemporaries. These treasured places were the result of a cultural memory brought from an industrialising Britain. The Gothic revival was led by British architects like Pouhere here, who sought inspiration from a medieval past. Early Christchurch architects were not limited to the Gothic. Benjamin Mountford's design for the Christchurch Club drew from the classical tradition. Again, this was a style that was introduced to Britain, this time from Italy, obviously, by John Nash in the early 19th century. Second-generation Christchurch architects like Samuel Hurst Seeger embedded a sense of belonging into the building we know as the Cramner Bridge Club, but it was his house, by using the same arcade detail that was found on the Christchurch Club. And when the city came to commemorate its centenary in 1950, the architects for the Centennial Wing made a direct and possibly too obvious reference to Mountfit's original museum. But the globalising effect of the Second World War saw new sources of inspiration for major buildings. The new railway station, completed in the 1960s, however, the concept begun earlier than that, drew from the memory of the Dutch modernists, the building now known as Science Alive, or we know as Science Alive. Our new art gallery evokes memories and images of certain modern American creations. And in our energy-conscious times, old buildings, like the former postal centre, found a new use as the City Council headquarters, so that the memory of the building remained embedded in the very structure. So cities exist in the present, but they hold memories that represent the past. And while our city is slowly being deconstructed in the background, structures like the Bridge of Remembrance contain the memories that engender a sense of place or belonging. Without memory, a place can have a foreign or alien feeling. Here's Ron Heron's proposal for Manhattan in the 1960s. So Christchurch faces an enormous challenge, but optimistically an even greater opportunity, and that is to create a memorable future. I'm sure, as you all are, that we'll cherish those parts of the city that have survived. And when the green spaces and the busy streets and the mixed-use low-rise buildings that we're promised eventuate, our new urban spaces will make people want to return again and again. Thank you.